With mostly market today, we have a bunch of guests in here. Mic's off, everything goes. Let's see what's going on.
Where's the Nasdaq now?
Well,
What's the outrage of the day? Is that what Newsday is?
yeah.
Rip PLEX. Rip
Wait,
PLEX.
is that the new name for the chill streams? Newsday EVE.
Yeah, Newsday Eve. It's just better than Matterall Chill Stream. Yeah, let's look at it, man. Look at Plex.
Rip.
Can you show that over a I don't know, multi-year period?
Not multi-year, but
I mean, you probably want to just show the last few days, like the last week, maybe.
yeah, if you look at it, it's taken a dip. I'll do it with the graph. It's most dramatic.
I'm concerned that Matterall might be slowly winding up to a 24-hour, news cycle.
Oh, yeah, one man. Is my voice? Does it sound like it's ripping? Because
Okay, it's gone down.
there, I just pulled the
That's
mic
summer.
away.
Is that the summer of
Oh, I thought you were talking about.
Mild
whatever this
discontent.
is?
Wait, was that the last week?
Yeah, it's not the last week. The last week that's the peak, right? The peak was at
Yeah.
about 4 and something. 4 point, looks like 3.5. And then you want to follow this orange line down, slowly cycle.
Wow. That spike is just sell-offs.
Here, yeah.
That spike was a sale.
Yeah, that one. That's just sell-off, and then
Yeah.
just
Yeah, that's
rip
people.
price.
Yep, people cashing out. It's actually looks like it was selling out at what 4.0, and at this point, Icy, which is I Choose You, is a big marketer and has like a fund and stuff. He was saying, "I'm high on Plex," and I don't think he meant literally. He
Smoking
was.
it?
Yeah, he wasn't smoking it. He was saying like it could go up to 4.5. So he was telling his people to get into it at 4.0. So it wasn't, I don't know if it was him getting out or telling his people to get in while he was getting out. Who knows? But
Pump
since
and
then,
It's fucking classic. I predicting that it's gonna go up, sitting on a huge pile, and then just dumping it in the face of the people that trust you.
yeah, get in, get in.
The Raging Bull message boards. Get in on Plex. Get in on Plex. It's hot as you're selling into.
No, but I mean, the thing was, I was suggesting that the Plex prices should go up as well, because it was being slightly suppressed due to the sale that happened like a month prior to that. But then CCP kind of took us all by surprise by introducing the Star Pack sales as well, and everything with the drifters and the uncertainties and Isaac getting swapped on. Yeah, like all this stuff.
Well, yeah, we can talk about that too. Is the sale that they had? I mean, there's this softening here, and this right here. If you look at it, let's see if right there.
Which sale? Do you want to go back to the sale that
I mean,
Chris was all
yeah,
upset about with the sale of game time in Plex? Yeah,
That's way earlier.
yeah, but it's what helped propel it upwards, right? I mean, again,
Right.
I just don't know that we're seeing anything here just yet that is.
Yeah. Okay. So So this is where it was after summer sales. Like we're still going back a year, and we're in summer, so you can see that. We definitely had softness in the market below a 3.0. This is probably the bottom out for the last year before this. You can't see it, but that's probably the low point, 2.7-ish. And that was where you could actually, if you were going to get into Plex, that was the right time to do it because it had already gone to 3.4 before that. So you wanted to buy it at this point here. And this is after a series of sales, so nobody knew where the bottom was. So that's about a 2.7, but that really is the bottom about a year ago. And then it starts making its climb to December, which is this really big. Is that December or November? It should be November or December. Let's see if I can hover over it.
Should be.
Yeah, late November, December. And there was a very small, you can see there was a giant march up, like a solid march up. And then comes the holiday season where you expect them to have a sale through Black Friday or Christmas sales, and it does dip temporarily. You can see the blue line is the faster line. It's the one that's more sensitive because it's only every 5 days, I think. Yeah, moving average of 5 days. So it's going to be a little more up and down, very reactionary. And the moving average for a 20-day is going to be a lot smoother in general. So that's more the stability of the trend. So right here you have a sale, and you can see that dip because it was only a few day sale. It was less than, it was like a 5 day sale or less.
No, that wasn't a sale. That was Because remember late December, we had that daily login rewards, the events, where you would get, those skill booster thingies, so you could inject more skill points.
Mhm.
So you had a rise in Plex demand where people basically Plex the accounts to go to Omega. You see that every time they do their daily logins. It increases the demand for Plex and the prices go up. So
No,
that
no,
was just like the
this right
reaction
here,
of that.
this dip. I don't.
Yeah, the dip. Yeah.
That's a sale, isn't it? Because, well, let's see. Because
I
that's a
think they did a
25th.
sale. It could
Yeah.
be that they did a sale as well, actually. But
They
I
did.
believe that was a reaction from Plex prices being slightly too high due to the daily look.
Let's have a look.
This-
So it's riding here at 3.3 ish, and then it dips down to about a 3.2. I don't think there was much. There wasn't much of an
No,
impact.
there has to be a sale. Though.
Yeah.
It looks like a sale when it goes up.
Yeah, because this is the 25th, and then a few days later, here's December 2nd. So right about here is the actual sale when it begins, probably Black Friday, right? And so
I
that,
think you need to fix your graph thing. I think you need to remove high and low because I think it's squished.
oh, okay. Let's see if I remove.
But wait,
It's
that
usually
doesn't make sense either. Though. That looks more like there was a sale where they did.
I know how to do it
Yeah,
here.
that can't be true.
That's better. You can see more granularity of prices there. Yeah, this is the sale because it happens right here at the end of November, right? Right about here, which would put it here. That's a sale. More Plex on the market because people are buying Plex and selling it. It's just that it didn't have a huge cooling effect. It only went down to 3.15, down from 3.3. So in the grand scheme of things, that was supposed to cool off the prices, and it did for a very short amount of time. And as you can see, it started to climb right back up, like right away it recovered. And then it started to make another large climb all the way into this year because there was nothing else. There was a Valentine's Day sale, and I think that's right about here. Let's see. Yep, 221. So that's a little
15%.
Valentine's Day sale there to cool it off. Why do sales cool off Plex prices? Somebody else can answer that if you want.
Supply increases. People are just converting real life money into Plex and then just
Yeah. So exactly. So when people can buy ISK cheaper with real money, they're getting a better value, so they do it. And that allows them to want to cash that in for ISK because that's normally what they want to do. So they sell it off, so you get more people selling Plex than usual, and the price dips. It's also a lot of perception too involved in there. But these two sales, my point is, these two sales did not really hamper. Here's one, and here's one. That Plex walk all the way up to the top here.
it's part of that whole ecosystem about whales coming in or going out of the game, big activities like wars and whatnot coming into the game. So this is really about whether it's the real life poor or real life rich people playing the game. It's such a complicated thing. So if you sit there and just try to analyze it based on in-game activity, that's not real. You're not going to get the real facts.
Not with Plex, and maybe not injectors, with things that touch the outside of the game.
Which everything pretty much does when you look at it, right? Because the real money is pretty much going to control Plex prices. Plex prices are tied directly into SP, and SP is tied into player activity. So it's all one big economy. You can't really separate one from the other.
One thing that kind of didn't give that cool down effect or cooling effect during that February sale was that it was just 15%. So a lot of people reacted saying that, oh no, I'm going to wait with buying. I think the same thing happened during Christmas. Because if you looked at the sales that were going on, reoccurring during 2018, you had anything from 40% discount up to 60% discount. So people were basically spoiled in terms of sales. And then the two first sales following that, the one during the Christmas and the one in February, I think, was just 15%. So you didn't get there wasn't much wow sensation to it.
No, but then you also get this thing that when they then do something like skill point gifting or benefiting skill point farming, right? Then you get the opposite. Then you get the conversion of Plex into zombie farms. So that increases the demand, and that's going to pull the price up. So if you get stuff like that coming into the game, when CCP is doing a sale, it tanks the price of Plex. When CCP is gifting away added skill points to Omegas, that's going to increase the price of Plex. So these things are all tied together. And if you change the utility of Omega accounts, or if you're doing something big to the game, that means that the zombie farmers are going to lapse and fuck off, right? Then that is going to also affect the Plex prices. So these things are all tied together.
This is where Dirk says something that happened, which was that these prices are skyrocketing. Right about here, CSM is panicking, saying, you got to do something about Plex prices. They're already hitting 4. That's unheard of. Usually, before this, the max a year ago was 3.4. So CSM's going nuts right about here. And what does CCP do? They release a sale that makes the problem worse. And it spikes way up into the 4.25 area. What was the nature of that sale? Does anyone remember?
Game time for Plex.
Yeah.
Right, which...
There was a 15% discount on the 500 Plex you normally pay in the game to get them.
Right, so instead of saying for real cash you can buy Plex, you can sell, which would increase supply, they did the opposite. They said you can now use Plex, you can now buy... What was the opposite?
It was a Plex consumption type of event.
Right, so people
as
wanted
opposed to a Plex supply kind of event.
Right, so people wanted to buy Plex. They put more demand on an already overheated demand market, and you can see the reaction. It explodes up.
To really get a good picture, you also need to look at the PCU, and you also need to look at the MERs, right? Because this is also tied into the whole supply of ISK, because it's going to be extremely sensitive to whether or not it's possible to print ISK in the game.
Yeah, I mean, the industry aspects of the game have been overheated for quite a long time. We hadn't had a big conflict since last summer. Like Imperium had basically been crabbing for the last 6 months or something. So there was a surplus in terms of ISK and material wealth in the game, and of course boosted the effect on that Plex price when that sale.
Guys are too smart for me.
Dirk, have you been looking at the MER on the ISK faucet?
Dude, I stopped looking at that. I'm not gonna lie. The MER bars the living shit out of me now because I'm so tired of just looking at
seeing
faucets turned to be
seeing the same problem.
You're a
and pointing it out again and again.
You're a Californian at heart. A running faucet makes you cringe.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like when you wrench the faucet handle so far to the right that you can't even unlock it anymore.
There's so much money coming into this game. Where's it all going? Oh, okay. So.
But no, I mean, look. Whenever you're dealing with Plex now, right? Like there is no single event that is self-explanatory for exactly what is going on, right? There are so many different inputs involved here. In terms of what is Plex demanded for, right? Who and how many are the actual suppliers of new Plex into the game? What is going on out there in terms of the skill injector market and, just overall sort of, wealth generation in the game. It is complex. And to sit there and just go, oh, well, look, this was because of a sale here and this was because of a different kind of sale over here.
Yeah.
And the CSM that then cries, oh, the price is too high. Well, price is too high what? Compared to what?
Not compared to the Chinese server.
Well, but again, the Chinese server is a totally different story. It's smaller and it's totally PvE centric. But the point is, when the CSM asks something like this or gives that outcry on behalf of the player base, they need to then not get CCP to panic, because if CCP panics and try to turn one of the knobs, it's going to trickle down to the rest of the ecosystem. It's just going to be disruptive as hell.
Yeah. Okay, so what we're talking about is you have the reverse pressure. So CSM right here is basically saying, do something, CCP, do something. The Plex prices are going too high. And CCP does something. They actually increase the pressure, and it goes up even higher, which is hilarious. No, I don't think they did that on purpose. What happens in these game companies is the sales department's totally separate and isolated from the game community department. So there's no relationship between what CCP is trying to do on their calendars to make money and what the players are feeling and how they're struggling or not struggling. And that's probably one of those disconnects. Plus, things are planned in advance. So there it is. So then you have a cooling off because they figure this has got to be the top, right? At 4.4. And they were right. It came down. And there was also some talk about like, well, wait a minute. There's some huge orders on there. This is not natural. Somebody's manipulating the market, etc. And over here, you see it kind of comes down. Down to a respectable 3.9 or 3.98, which is kind of funny.
This is also why the whole thing about someone is manipulating it, there is a limit to how much you can actually effectively manipulate a market that's open for everyone. So this is also why when goons are saying, oh, we haven't actually touched PLEX yet, we're not going to go in and manipulate PLEX yet. The only way you can really do anything effectively as a Imperium against manipulating PLEX is the nominal value of ISK. That means pumping up the printing of ISK and then just slamming it on there and pretty much competing with the ISK generation of the rest of the EVE community, right?
Let's be specific. I mean, very accurate about this. He didn't say yet. I made that mistake too. He said, we're not going to touch ISK, or along the lines of, we're not going to touch ISK right now. That would be bad for us.
No, because it's about devaluing the money that you have or the ISK generation you're capable of by ramming up the Imperium's ISK generation. If they started focusing on only printing ISK, right, and pretty much slamming all that ISK into the system and pretty much buying up all that excess PLEX, then you will raise the nominal value. But again, when you look at how it gets generated by real life money and wallets, that's not something that they can really manipulate unless Aerith wants to use his real life money.
Right.
Well, you can do manipulations, but it's insanely risky. It's very kind of short term. It's nothing close to what it used to be if you go 10 years back in time, where you could actually, as a collective or even as a very wealthy single.
But what are you calling a manipulation? How are you manipulating the market?
A short-term manipulation refers to basically increasing margins in one way or the other. So either you just bash down the prices by dropping or significant amounts of PLEX in this case, or the other way around. You buy it up and then you intend to profit from the artificially created margin that sort of.
Well, if you want the price to go down, you need PLEX on at hand to actually put into the market. Otherwise, it's not going to change. Yeah. This whole manipulation thing, it's not like in items in EVE where you can deliberately punch a hole and do obscure things like when it comes to manipulating the fact that there's a lot of players that don't really know what something is worth. So you can go in and when something is undersupplied compared to a long-term strategy, you can go in and then just pull it all out and then increase the value by 300% and then pretty much make your money back in a few days or a few hours. You can't do something like that in PLEX because there's just too much open market. Everyone has access to it. There is no way of effectively limiting access to PLEX because you can just swipe your card and you get PLEX.
No, but that's not what I'm trying to say. You can't, of course, yeah, that's the point. You can't really manipulate PLEX in any way or form to that extent, due to the fact that you can have more PLEX coming into the game at any single point. So if the PLEX prices go up too much, you're gonna have way more people buying PLEX, and over time that's gonna sort of go back to an equilibrium. But you can still do it short term. So like I say, you have to have a stockpile of PLEX. That by default, that's going to limit just how many people can do this in game, because you need someone who actually invests into PLEX over a very long period of time. So I'm not saying that this guy is doing it, but I could see him as being one of those guys who could maybe be doing it, and that's I choose you. So let's say you do buy 300,000 of PLEX back in fall during 2018, and at this stage, especially during the circumstances we have at the moment, where PLEX is very, very volatile right now, you could dump all of that PLEX onto the market, make a profit, then make the buy orders go way further down than where you stop dumping the Plex, and then rebuy it again in order to get a profit from it. But it's insanely risky to do it, and it's very, very difficult to do it as a single person in today's EVE.
Effectively, the best way you could manipulate Plex at the moment would be to destroy all the offshoring, right? And then potentially create a 1DQ Plex market, right? Something like that. That would actually work, because then you would force all the Plex traders to go back onto NPC stations and then suffer all the fees. And then you would have the benefit by being able to remove all the fees on your structure.
That would be an amazing advantage to a group that was insulated, like the Imperium is, or Horde is, right? Because you would give them a discount on Plex, essentially, because they wouldn't have to pay the taxes on it.
If you moved all null centric Plex trade into null, that would be interesting, and that is potentially possible.
How is that possible though? Because Plex thing is, you can buy Plex in any part of the universe and then just transport it somewhere else, like immediately, by redeeming it into your wallet.
But the fees.
But you can't buy it from anywhere. You need to be in the region, right?
No, you have to buy it in the region, but then you can transport it to any character, whatever, anywhere you need.
You're right.
But the thing is, like, when you're talking about the broker fees and that stuff, that doesn't really allow you to have a completely different price somewhere else in EVE, even though it's an isolated market. The broker fees just means that it impacts how Plex is being traded and at what margins, like how much difference is there between buy orders and sell orders.
All right, you guys are super advanced. We need to dumb this down. Finish your comment. We'll go on.
Let me just finish this. You can buy Plex from a goon market without being able to sell. That's my point.
All right, you guys are getting too advanced. And that's because it gets really advanced really fast in this territory, and especially you start talking theory and application. But let's look at what actually happened rather than what we could do or what is theoretically possible. This hump here again caused by a sale that put more demand on Plex, because you could buy subscription time for 15% less Plex, which means that your Plex went a bit further, and people basically bought up a bunch and stuck it in their characters and paid for their characters like a year in advance with Plex, because it was 15% less. And that's what you get here, and then you get the hangover that drops. I don't remember what pressures were here, but let's take a quick look. That is dropping from about... Oh, that's the number of orders. I don't know, is it 3 point...
I think that was...
3.5 or 3.4. Sorry, 4.34.
That was just a hangover, like you said, from people stocking up on Plex. So basically, the demand following that sale went down.
Right.
And the price.
Because everybody bought in advance. So if you were going to do that thing, you're going to do it when it's 15% less. Buy it up for a year, 2 years in advance, and then you don't buy the next month or the month after that. And so this is when demand sags after this large sale that somebody takes advantage of, but it really only sagged to just under 4. If you look here, that is a 4.0. That's 4 million per Plex, which comes out to about, I believe that's 2.5 billion per month of game time. That's a high number.
2 billion.
Is it 2 billion? Yes. And then 4. Okay. So 2 billion. Because it takes 500. So you're right. 2 billion. I think it was getting into 2.5 billion when it was up here. That's when it was way up there. So if you look here, then it starts to climb again. And this is something I don't understand. There's a drought of sales. There's no pressures to create more volume or more supply. And so again, it recovers from this super steep climb that it had here, replicates here. It starts going up and up and up and up.
I think we should move out of the technical analysis and lockfox stuff and start talking about what this actually means.
All right.
What's it mean? It's more about what impact does it have when you have these prices? Where is the ISK coming from to actually pay for this? What is the faucets and sinks in the game? where do we have issues? Why are people either coming in and playing, or why are they leaving? Why are they canceling their multiple accounts?
Oh, okay.
And how does that tie into the whole Drifter thing?
Well, that's
Because
where I'm getting
without
to. Let me get to that. Okay, so Plex goes back up and sits at a 4.35-ish area, which is about 2.5 billion per month of game time, which is extraordinary. And then it has, I think there is a sale here, if I'm not mistaken, yes.
End of May.
What's it
It
here?
should be one.
I think so. Anyway,
You see that volume spike.
yeah, there's a sag. This is what I'm curious about right here. At the very end, you can see it. We'll get closer on it. What's going on this last 4 or 5 days? We've called out spikes and sags in the market when they seem immediate, and I think we've been really close to the day 1, day 2 about it. I think that there's definitely something going on here. Let's exaggerate that plunge.
I spent way too much looking at this stuff, unfortunately, and I noticed some more radical stuff going on yesterday when all of a sudden we kind of lost this the basement. No, it's not called the basement, is it? Like the lower level that was like
the floor.
almost like the floor as a security blanket in terms of buy orders.
I like basement though. That makes it sound like there's something below the floor.
That's like me trying to translate stuff directly from my Swedish brain into English. Go so. But anyway, like if you go back to that spike, you notice that was when we had the first 15% sale in not during the year, but as of recently. So you have that one, and then about a month later, you have another 15%, which is 1 or 2 weeks ago now, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Also in combination with the Star Pack sale. So if you're not aware, there are things called DLCs in EVE. So there's the Galaxy Pack, the Star Pack, the Starter Pack, and the Meteorite Pack, I think. And you can only buy those once per account. And it started off with a 50% sale on Steam, and then it moved on to the EVE Online official website as well. But that's just part of the reasons why we see Plex prices going down the way they are. We also have the natural occurring thing where lower activity during the summer is going to have a negative impact on Plex price volumes. And you also have to take into consideration that we've had very slim margins on skill injectors for quite a while. So the skill farms haven't really been making that much ISK. And if they don't make that much ISK, you're going to have less people doing it. So that also reduces the Plex demand. I think I can't remember who I was theory crafting this stuff with. Maybe it was ICSU and River and some other people. But I think the estimation is that Plex skill farms could maybe be as much as 20 to 30% of the total demand of Plex. So, like Caleb was mentioning earlier, all of those things tie together in terms of the Plex price. It's one huge kind of economy where one feeds the other. But then most recently we have the stuff going on in NullSec and the drifters, the potential war on HiSec, the announced blackouts. So there's, I think, what we're seeing now is just people, in combination of all of that happened prior,
Mm-hmm.
people are now just being very, very insecure in terms of should I be buying Plex? Should I be?
Why wouldn't they put, when you want security, you put it in gold? Why wouldn't you put it in Plex, the equivalent of gold in EVE?
Because it's tied into resource value and ISK printing. So you can't really just say, oh, I'm just going to store it. Because, of course, you can store it, but only if you're storing it for the specific purpose of its utility. And it's not as speculation sensitive as gold is in real life. So you can't really compare them directly one-to-one.
No, but also, like, when we look at what are the potential effects of the blackout, we don't know yet. Like, some people are saying that.
In addition to that, it's not just a blackout, but there's rumors of a possible asset safety going away for NullSec, which probably has more financial implications.
I don't know. I don't think it's going to change that much. The whole thing about asset safety in Null, that's really a non-issue. It's really about the barrier of entry to get a foothold into Null, because no one is going to start doing warfare specifically to get loot. That's just not worth it. You can say that there's a consequence to losing everything, and that will increase the incentive for attackers, but not on the loot side. It's more on the fact that you're destroying the people's assets.
Let me just rephrase it in a way that doesn't mean that we get knee deep into what everybody thinks about asset safety. But when you create uncertainty in a market, right? And if the uncertainty leads to people believing that there is potentially going to either be less activity or less income generation or something like that, right? Then that means you probably wouldn't be looking at Plex going up.
And if I'm not mistaken, the local thing should reduce the efficiency of running multiple accounts, right? So that means that it's going to be harder to just have like 10 accounts mining or ratting or whatever. That means that you're going to lower the demand on Plex, which means that the price is going to tank, like we've seen, right? But the utility is still going to be valuable, right? Because you could actually see more activity going into the game. So the conversion back, because of increased destruction and less ISK coming in, means that the real value compared to the nominal value is going to change and actually shift to a better point than we are at now.
All right.
Well, I mean, it depends on how you look at it. Like, I think when those people who trade in Plex, when they look at what's going on in the world of EVE, they pay attention to they might have Alcino's etc. as well, but they pay attention to what the leaders are saying, what's going on in the forums, what Reddit is saying, what we are talking about, and then they try to make predictions based on that. But that's very much speculation. And what we're hearing now is like you mentioned earlier and corrected what the Ventani actually said, and when they said that we are not touching Plex because that would be bad for us. And the fact is that a lot of the Plex consumption, not all of it, of course, but a lot of it is coming from those who are doing PvE and industry in Delve, for example. People who do have, like Caleb was mentioning, multiple accounts, and they are basically saying that what we're hearing from the forums is that they are unsubbing, they will dock up, and they won't be out and about doing their stuff when the blackout hits. So I mean, that means that you're going to have a reduced faucet coming in, but you're also going to have a reduced faucet in terms of ISK. That is, there's going to be less ISK generation from PvE activities and all, if that's true. Once again.
Well,
but also a reduced
that, and if you do have that, right, what do those alts use to be able to play the game? They use Plex to be able to play the game, right? And if they're going to be logging off alts, let's say I don't want to say unsubbing as a player, but reducing the number of alt accounts that they have active, in the future, then that's also Plex demand that is going, or is at least temporarily going away, or whatever the hell it is, right? I mean, again, all speculation.
But again, potentially, right? If this actually improves gameplay and the value, then you could very soon start seeing a potentially increase in value and utility of SP, because now instead of having 7 accounts, you will focus on one, and that means that you're going to try and skill it to better and better tools of the game, which is going to be more interesting because local is off and warfare will be more meaningful in null. So that means that the SP demand will then convert into a Plex demand. So there is a seesaw to this. Even though it's tanked right now, it might pick up again because of that increased need for actually buying SP, which then transform all over to the zombie farming. So they are all tied together. This is also why CCP has created such a brilliant design in many ways when it comes to the whole ecosystem. The only problem is what Dirk and I have been talking about for years now. The fact that the faucets are way too open and it's an infinite tit that you can just suck on forever.
Yeah. And that, it's also worth noting that even though it might tank temporarily, in the long term, Plex prices will continue to go up due to what you just mentioned, Caleb, being the faucets. Because even though you were to reduce ratting and stuff in Delve or in other parts of nullsec by 50%, the net result in terms of ISK coming in and going out is still going to be quite ridiculous. So the faucets will still be way bigger.
And it could flatten out, and that would still be fine, because if the faucet starts turning off, well, and then there's a risk that it potentially is only on for certain entities that are able to still suck out ISK and print ISK from the system, right? Then you still get the disparity between the fact that some can actually get increased ISK because the nominal value versus the real value will change, and then you get onto the whole topic of there is a future possible where goons can actually manipulate in quotation mark the Plex prices, because they will be one of the few entities able to on scale print ISK, right? That means that they can deplete the Plex market.
But it's against the rules to manipulate Plex, I thought.
It's not manipulation, it's fair game. If they are able to print more ISK and they're able to pull out and increase the real value of Plex higher, and thus actually make it a scarce product for high sec players comparatively, this is a fair play. This is not manipulation. It's just putting their money where their mouth is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure that it is. Well, number one, you would have to define for me what you consider to be manipulation. Okay. And even there, I'm not sure that is the bannable offense that it used to be. Because I don't recall if Probag Bear, that was his name, right? Who did Plex Wall.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he got banned for what he did there. And
but that wasn't
that would have been a form of manipulation to reset the
that
price.
Was taking advantage of a tax shift. He didn't manipulate the Plex. He actually took advantage of a change in the tax policy, and he saw a way of
he hurried on and moved to the Scilly Isles
to make enough trades on there, right? That technically manipulated the price, not manipulated in some sort of nefarious term, but the ability to go in there and reset the price is possible, right? There are people out there, there are entities out there, there are players out there that have the kind of ability that if they want to go into that market and make their buys and set up their new orders and everything else, that they can effectively change the current pricing in the game. Now, whether or not other players then combat that or work in favor of it, in whether in a coordinated effort or not, is a different story.
Yeah, and really, it's part of the game to do a squeeze on Plex if you are a part of a group that's able to actually print ISK, right? And this ties into the whole new cartels and the whole embargo thing. These are all tied together because, as I said, the whole offshoring thing could be pretty problematic very soon if there's an actual activity from nullsec entities in high sec, and it could shift the whole benefit of trading Plex into nullsec because you don't want to actually pay those fees and taxes in high sec. So there's a lot of activity going on, and this is fair game, and it is why we are going to see something resembling old school OTEC very soon.
Let's actually, we're done here because I don't know what the hell you guys are talking about anymore. If I'm lost, everybody else is lost. Consider me the common man. Like if I'm not understanding it. All right, we're all lost in EVE. So
that's what. Hey, by the way, the fact that we're all lost is what makes a market. because there are some people out there who think they know what's going on. There are other ones who don't know what's going on. There are other ones who do know what's going on.
Thank you, Rumsfeld.
Okay, so and Caleb means the unknown unknowns. All right, so we want to talk about this next, which is the Tranquility Consortium meeting update. Oops, sorry, that's not it. Let's go back one step. There was something on... Let's go back. That was actually a day ago. We can do it in order, I suppose, but let's see. It's right here. Raise tax, get the axe. This went out on Reddit. And as you can see, it's basically a call to boycott Perimeter Trading Company, which belongs to a consortium now. It belonged to Test. Test actually put it down. It's actually a Keeps Our Eyes Sold test from Oninen, and it was planted in Perimeter, and it was used as an offshoring base where you could buy and sell your Plex and injector, the very expensive things, with a really, really reduced tax rate of 0.3 or 0.03. Normally, if you're trading in JITA or any NPC station, it's about 2 to 3%. But here,
this ties back to the whole high sec trading wars, right? That's been going on pretty much since.
Right, but let me finish the introduction.
Just came out.
Before you get yes, so what you have is an offshoring place where the players get to set the tax rate, and they set it at 0.3 in order to be allure the business of big money, which is Plex and injectors. That's where the big money is. And they said they wouldn't raise the prices, and then moving this around a bit. And then recently it became a consortium because they were fighting over that area. And I won't get into how they were fighting about it, but they were. And basically, Test said, let's make a deal with our enemies, Horde, and I choose you and whoever else, and basically said, let's just share the profits. There's enough here for everybody. So the wars stop. We all come out of this trade center. That's where we make our money. Horde gets some money. Test gets some money. We'll give a little bit to Goon Swarm, et cetera, et cetera. So they're buying NullSec off. So NullSec has a monopoly now on offshoring in the Jita area. And so they're
It's always been like that, right? It's always been a trade war with nullsec entities being the shadowy party in the background.
Well, that's
but
been
the interesting part is that if these offshoring islands are at risk in the near future, those markets could, as I mentioned, potentially move back out and just live out in actual null space instead.
Okay, I'm not finished with the introduction. So basically, you have a monopoly now of NullSec with one castle, let's call it, near the main market hub of the entire game, and they're making money because they can offer a lower tax rate. Well, the tax rate is going up from a 0.03 to a 0.05. And it's going up because there's a board of directors that voted it to go up. And so the promise that it would never go up that was made by Vili, the leader of Test, was negated because he's no longer solely in charge of this. So now that it goes up 66% from a 0.3 to a 0.5, there is a resistance movement that is just opened up. And this is from TikTok, who is from Volta. They do a lot. They're a small gang group that do really well in tournaments, but also, so they're very good dog fighters as far as piloting. But they put together the raise the tax, get the axe. And they're saying, if you want to join this corporation that's called Liar's Den, that you'll be given free ships in order to defend the structures so they won't be wiped out. And this will be basically a small militia protecting small buildings that will compete against the nullsec lock on this area. And the way they'll compete about it is they're going to have 0.1 tax. So you can either pay 0.5 or you can pay 0.1. And
it's going to be hilarious.
Yeah.
Because with really low taxation, if there's activity enough, you can pretty much earn enough for a replacement of structures really fucking fast, right? That means that this could end up a whole new type of structure whack-a-mole in high stakes.
Yes.
Well, we already had it.
Let's look at
That's the whole point.
I'm saying again.
Yeah, the market data, if you look at it, you can see where some of the buys are. Let's look at Plex. Wow, so there's a zero market right now. That will probably get destroyed quickly if there's no militia to defend it. And then you have here, right after the no tax structure, you have the perimeter, raise the tax, get the axe, 0.1%. You really don't get into... I'm going down the list here. Here's the first Tranquility Trading Tower. That's a 0.5% tax. So it's facing a lot of sell orders before you ever get to it.
Actually, I think Mogul actually has one now as well in New Kildare.
Does he have a 0 point? What's that one?
0.1. It's somewhere. There's quite a few of them. Because that's the thing, when they introduced the same thing basically happened when I Choose You. Before Test came in and took over perimeter.
Hold on, I have to buy some Plex. I just saw a sale.
The same thing happened because I Choose You, he increased the broker's fees from 0.3% to 0.5%. And there was, I'm not going to call it an outrage, but there were quite a few people who were upset about it, traders and stuff. And then he had more competition coming in, undercutting him, and then Test moved in. So when they keep it at 0.5, you're going to get all kinds of people putting up competition. Because like Caleb said, during the 48 hours, you usually get, sometimes even more than that, between 2 to 3 days before your structure will eventually get attacked and go into hole. So the market service will be inactivated. You're gonna make the money back that you paid for the ASPO, and if you use it at 0.2%, you're gonna make profit as well. So that's gonna be there's gonna be tons of ninja marketeers coming onto the market if they keep it at 0.5.
How do I check? Okay, so unless they put the tax number in the title of their structure, how do I check their tax rate?
You have to go to the actual structure and put up an order.
You don't care about tax rate unless you are an actual trader. Really, you don't care. You just care about the price.
But it's in the name of the structure, so that people out there go, oh, this is where I want to go and list my order.
Yeah, some people are doing that. Some people don't. But I think
the ASBO's already paid half of itself already.
Yeah. Oh, it has?
Yeah, it's mine.
It's yours?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Oh, it is?
Who am I talking to?
And there's a benefit, right?
Oh, Cable. Okay. You're from Volta, right?
If you're launching these structures, right, you can start out with an extremely low fee, so you can basically get the deep traders to place their orders very early on, and then you can raise it gradually or as soon as the clients start using it. So there's so many things that tie into this whole market war, and then who is losing it the fastest, who is actually aggressing against who. So this is the same as we've had before. It's just the scale of activity is going to increase.
All right, so we have Cable here who actually put the structure up. Let's call that name out again. It is raise the tax, get the axe. It has a 1% tax rate or a 0.1% tax rate. Cable, you put that structure up?
Yes.
What's the idea here? What's the big idea?
The concept behind it is essentially cultivating the generic hate that to some extent has been creeping up towards test. A lot of people have an axe to grind with them, which is also part of the name. And there seems to be a significant amount of support that really dislikes the concept of an alliance leader or coalition leader and CSM member who blatantly has decided to break his own promise.
But his defense is that he has to break it because it's now a consortium. It's not up to him.
Sure, but in that case, should he have ever made the promise then?
He actually did make the promise again after the deal was done. So.
Oh, he did?
At that point, I guess.
Yeah.
He did.
What was the promise? What do you mean after the deal? After the consortium was done, he said the prices won't go up.
Yeah. The promise was that the tax would never exceed 0.3%. That was both prior and after the deal being made between Pandemic Horde and TESS as well.
Oh, so he was saying, don't resist this change. Not that anybody had a choice, but nothing will change.
Read my lips. No new tax.
That's President George Bush, 1989, I think, who had to basically raise taxes because, well, why am I getting into politics? But basically, he had to go back on a promise. So that's what that reference is. Let me pick the location here. Boop. There it is. Show info. That's what I wanted to do. All right. So there it is. Now, how are you going to defend this, man? Because it's going to get crushed, right? They're going to send the cops after you in perimeter.
We're excited to see, first of all, what they do initially. We have already been contacted by a relatively large quantity of different groups who are willing to partake in various different ways. But the big part of what we're going to do is essentially, as is in the post, we want people who want to help but are not willing to either partake in an actual war with their mains, or if they're wormholes, they don't want to be at war because then high-sec things become more annoying and so on and so forth. To simply invite them to make an alpha account and then help us with that, even if it's a brand new one.
Wow. So you're getting a lot of support from people you don't know. Are you getting threats from people you do know?
Many.
Yeah. What? Like, tell us about that. What are they saying?
Well, okay, not necessarily threats, but there's a lot of smearing going on, especially on Reddit, as you could probably imagine. There's a lot of people who especially from Test and other null blocks, who has a very big grudge towards me because of the other enterprise that I'm doing in regards to NPC Sotios, which I know has been a topic on TIS. So they obviously all have a screw that guy because he's just trying to steal money from the other guys, essentially, something like that. That's the general narrative that's trying to be pushed.
Right. And your reason for doing it is what? Just resistance movement, or you think it's? You said something. You alluded to it. Too much concentrated power in Villy's hands. CSM member, leader of a coalition, and a lock on high sec profits.
Yeah, and I just don't. I just like the concept of someone breaking their promise, and that's like the majority. And of course, the fact that I have a great fun amount of time when I decide to essentially pick on test. Because they do give, I mean, we call it the salt mine in Thera for a reason.
So you're from Volta. Let's make that clear. And there's a lot of great players in Volta. I guess there's TikTok and there's Sutonia, and you guys are a small group of relatively able fighters, right?
Yeah, there's some very skilled pilots in Volta, of course. We've opened up recruitment to an extent recently, though, because we had, as everybody does, have a low end on some. And but yeah. And speaking of the whole regards to the people being salty, we've just been war decked by pirate on contract of test.
Oh, but I noticed you already have the Vortex coming through from both the police thingy that Test has and Pandemic Horde as well.
That is correct.
So they're declaring war on you to be able to attack you, I suppose.
Yes.
But didn't you mention that half of the Aspel have been paid already?
Yes, it has.
So that's one of the plans that Caleb alluded to, that you essentially can, these things pay for themselves so fast that you can just kind of do this endlessly.
That was,
and I intend to
in
do
history,
so.
it needed to be up like 6-7 days, and it was fine. You could.
No. It doesn't need to be up 6 or 7 days. It's enough. If you do it at 0.1, it pays back in 2 days usually, because you're gonna. The thing is, like, this only attracts the very high volume traders when it comes to usually PLEX, but to some extent also injectors and multiple pilot training certificates. But PLEX is the big one, and these structures tend to get about 30% of the market share within hours usually.
I mean,
yeah, but if there's more competition, right? If more are launched, you can't expect to get that market share as easily as you could in the past. In the past, there were fewer players. Potentially, there's going to be more players now, so you need the added amount of days. And then, of course, the replacement thing is tied into what type of structure you're actually launching, right?
Yeah, but the goal for me is not to make money. The goal is to screw with the monopoly that Test and friends have been having for a long extended period of time. And in regards to the whole, like, how long it needs to be there, if I with 1% or with 0.1% can claim approximately 10% of the daily, just an average day of the Plex market, just 10%, then the whole thing is paid for in one day.
Yeah, and again, if you start looking at the potential of null versus high sec, it might actually be worth it to sacrifice and not even break even and just keep competing and destroying the market in high sec to shift it into null.
So I'm checking out your competition here that's undercutting even you to see where they're coming from, because I think one viable strategy that Test could use is to undercut you to dilute your ability to make a profit while they make it expensive for you to put things up over and over again. But I guess you probably have deep pockets, so it doesn't matter.
I mean, the big damage is still being done towards Test though. I mean,
and that's the whole point.
Going from, I mean, they are losing 0.5% of all of those broker fees if they have the complete market. That's a huge amount of risk. All of a sudden, you're actually talking about probably close to 800, 900 billion is per month coming out of that TTT Keepstar. So if you get people to trade into the 0.1 or 0.0% structures, you're hurting the wallets of both goons from Pandemic War and Test quite significantly.
Yeah, well, I was thinking it's more like a fever. Like, yeah, it's a necessary discomfort in order to burn out the virus, and that's what you would make it hard for someone to sustain a campaign about undercutting your tax rate until you burn them out, and then you go back to your normal body temperature, your normal tax rate. But that would just be one strategy. I don't know if it would work. You would still suffer the losses for that amount of time, but yeah. Well, this is very interesting, and I really love the idea of a rebellion like that. That has me like feeling pretty good about what the dynamics of conflict will be. That if the nullsec empire decides to attack small groups and make it hard for them, or the imperial or nullsec, or highsec, right? Because let's face it, the guys that are buying T2 stuff are usually mission runners or people who are smaller groups inside of highsec. I think if you have an interest in being a large group and using the higher level technology, you're probably going to go to nullsec anyway. But smaller groups are the ones that are probably going to have to pay the price if there is a monopoly on moon materials, T2 materials, and all that kind of high technology. So it'd be neat to see a
There's no longer a
rebellion.
monopoly on T2 though, because you can get more fight in highsec now because of the invasions.
Right, but their response to that is they're going to gank those areas, or at least that's what some of the linemen say.
Even then, there's there's a very, very small amount of more fight coming out of those invasion sites at the moment.
But it's
could expand maybe, but
the thing is, it's not you need to survive. You need to survive by making your own equipment. That is all you need to do. In order to make a huge profit, you were probably never in that market space anyway. Like, you're going to go to where you can make a huge profit. You can go to nullsec, build your stuff at a lower cost, and then bring it into the market and sell it at a higher cost. So I think it's a matter of survival rather than profiteering for the groups that are in highsec.
It's a bit more complicated than that, because when the markets mature in nullsec, right, you're gonna have a totally new scenario where potentially JITA does not really control the price index of stuff anymore. And that means that you're going to have different purchasing power indexes in different regions, which means that your requirements of printing ISK might change in null. So if you're trading and living only in say Empire space, that means that you're going to pay a lot less for the things that you're using to keep up your living. So this is why we're not going to get a proper true monopoly like we had in the past, or almost had. We're going to get a very null-centric oligopoly where all the null entities agree to not take advantage of shipping in and out of highsec. And this is going to work. It's not going to be like where they can control prices entirely, but they're going to control them enough to then create those local markets, create that purchasing power index difference, and then make it even more viable to actually live in null than it is now.
So that sale that I just jumped on, I only bought 1,000 because I'm not convinced PLEX is going to stay here. I think it's still dropping. So I just did it because it was local in JITA. You could just buy it and not move it. Whatever. Yeah, it's already done.
Another interesting fact is that I don't know exactly how many of the PLEX whales in the game are null players. But let's say that they are a third, right? They could potentially start moving out and only trading PLEX locally and making it extremely tax beneficial. And if, say, 40 to 50% of the player base of EVE has some tie to a null entity, they will have access to these markets. It's going to change the whole ecosystem.
Okay. So that's it for economics. I wanted to spend some time talking about it since we haven't talked about it in a long time. I will check one more thing. Look at these large injectors. Now, I think this market might be ripe for some increase, and I'll explain why. But it's also sharply coming down. Even though it's not directly pegged with PLEX, it is related. So it's going to suffer, not suffer, but it's going to drop along with PLEX a little bit. Now, the reason I think there might be a future in it, and this is not advice, right? Because what happens when you take my advice? You lose money. But there are a lot of players right now who are moving towards the drone regions in the form of NC and PL, and even some Horde members are moving closer to Kavala Expanse. And they are going to set up basically the same thing that the Imperium has set up, only like 3 or 4 years later. And in that, they're going to put up their super capital umbrella and let people farm away and use rorquals to generate as much ISK, to generate as much capital ships as they can. That is something that is happening. It is a fact. In order to get into those rorqual pilots quickly, because they will pay for themselves if you get in quickly enough, is injectors. And so that's why I think there might be a strong demand on injectors in the next month.
Null-centric wise, we're going to see the proper splitting of the empire. We're going to have an east and a west, right? We're going to have a Rome and a
south.
right? We're going to have both these big cities potentially building this new normal that I'm hoping will develop, because this has been the dream since 2004-5 when the first organization started trying to build free ports and stuff like that.
Also, it should be noted that Rote Capel, a small group, is moving into Tribute. They're actually taking space right now. Let me actually find that.
Hey, Billy.
Don't know if it'll be easy to find. Is Billy unmuted? Let's give him a chance to talk if he can. 1 second. Welcome, Billy, to the Newsday. We were just talking about the perimeter Keepstar and the promise that has changed because the tax rate is going up, and I wanted to know if you had anything to say about that.
Not particularly. I mean, unfortunately, when I made the original promise, it was kind of with the intent of, or with the belief that we would be the ones holding it. We obviously aren't anymore. Obviously, like the day after that was announced, I foolishly thought nothing would continue, but obviously that's not correct. So I guess I'll be the one that'll get to eat the crow on that. So it is what it is, I guess.
All right. So it is what it is.
Billy is low, so I don't know if he's. I don't know how that's translating out to the stream or whatever.
Billy is,
Yeah,
I think.
Talk louder, Billy, is what they're
No,
saying.
oh. All right. Well, real life started to call me, but let's see if I can go on a little bit longer. Anyway, take my word for it. Rote Capel is entering nullsec, and that's not a first. They've been in Syndicate for a while. That's where they roam. But now it looks like they're actually taking territory in Pureblind, and that's one group that's moving into that vacuum that was talked about not long ago. With the northern powers abandoning the north and Imperium not really wanting it, it's kind of up for grabs. So we'll see what happens. All right. What else did you guys want to talk about? What's in the news out there? Billy, what do you have going on? There must be tons of things between CSM and running test.
Well, we got this exciting war we're doing where we fight daily and win and lose, and well, we don't lose so much, but lots of things happening.
Yeah, that is a war with Winter Coalition. And how are the drifters affecting you lately?
Not too much, although we killed a bunch of Fortizars this morning that the drifters did the initial reinforce on, so we appreciate that, drifters. Thank you.
Yeah, so I was wondering when that would happen. The drifters being used to help, to basically third party. The drifters are the third party in a conflict between two people. The drifters soften up a target, and then one of the two people comes in and takes it out. So that is starting to happen.
Well, normally we don't touch Fortizars at all, but drifters reinforced them, and Fraternity's showing some weakness, so we went and killed.
Right. We talked about the blackout also this weekend. I'd like to get your thoughts on it. What do you think about that? And do you think it'll be permanent, a delayed local?
I can't really talk about that one.
CSM thing, or you have plans you can't talk about?
It's probably something because of CSM you probably shouldn't
Oh,
be
right.
speculating on.
All right. Well, I'm looking here for evidence of rote Capel, but you guys just take my word for it. I'm sure it's happening. Okay, what else do we have? Ashtarothi, are you in here?
Yes.
How's it going, man? What's new?
Not much. Just kind of. I haven't been able to play the last few days. The biggest thing was we have been seeing the Triglavians being way more aggressive in the invasions, including warping into conduits, causing some very interesting and fun encounters.
Wild. All right. Well, there's no new stuff in high sec, right? Like there was a day where that happened. It looked more like an event than anything else.
Yeah, well, no, that's an ongoing thing. I mean, like I said before, ARC has had this ongoing story that started even before Invasions did. So we'll have to wait and see where that's going. Obviously, I'm anticipating the next step or whatever that might be tomorrow, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Every Wednesday, seems like.
Yeah. So I legitimately have no idea where it's going. I know that there's a lot of debate about whether or not the blackout is going to be an event or not, as in a short-term event. The fact that it does have like a banner and it's being put out in the same sort of way that you would see like the Rogue Swarm Alert or one of those like short-term events. And in addition to that, we actually do have an event that is slated to come out extremely soon. There are accelerators that are on Singularity that are for an event that expire on August 1st. And generally speaking, accelerators usually expire 1 or 2 weeks after the event is over. So that means we are any day now from whatever event will cause those accelerators to drop.
And by event, we should make it clear that CCP puts on not necessarily live events with devs in there and stuff like that, but they basically have like little temporary scenarios with storyline development, right? That's what a live event is in EVE Online.
So historically, the agency events, as we call them, have tasks and sites that appear all over the universe, and then there's some sort of task that you do, or there's a collection of different tasks that you can do, like killing specific rats, mining specific minerals, hacking specific thingamahoopers, killing players in specific ships, etc., that will award you points. And so the sites themselves usually have some sort of goodie in them, and then like a skin or something. And then there are points that you can collect that kind of work towards these larger, broader rewards. So more recently, we've actually seen things drop in the sites like the new like accelerators, the new like there's some sort of new module involved in a lot of times. Like for the Garistas event, we got the low slot module that functions as both a ballistic control unit and a drone damage amplifier. We got one for the Mortis Legion that actually assisted with both precision and damage. These interesting little modules or implants we've seen. But then the points themselves usually acquire some sort of like skin, right? Any rate, the weird thing about this is that this new agency has no place for an event. There's no, like, if you would think like under encounters or under exploration or all those other subcategories, there is no place to put it. They're all full, basically.
I was just saying, and usually an event comes with a release because it's part of a marketable sort of thing, right?
No, a lot of times events, a lot of the events are actually holiday-ish. Like The Crimson Harvest is Halloween.
Yeah.
The Garistus Bunny is Easter, so on and so forth. So, I mean, it looks the pieces are sliding into place for this to be a summer themed, heat themed, because the accelerators themselves, the word that's used in the accelerators translates to heat wave. So it's very possible that like there will be some sort of acceleration of Sancha or along those lines. We do have a set of skins that are for sale that are for Sancha, and a set of skins that are coming for the Kaldari. The Kaldari ones look like pretty traditional, like, oh my god, these are awesome, I want to buy them right now, for sale. Whereas the Sancha ones are a little bit more plain, they're red, but they're both premium. So they don't look like they're going to be dropping from the sites or from this event. So it's really like the pieces of information are conflicting, but we do know that there are accelerators and they are set to expire on the 1st of August.
All right. Well, the next topic we're going to take offline, so join public if you want to talk about this. We're going to talk about are players unsubscribing from the game? There seems to be a few articles out there. Are they unsubbing? Because I've heard players say, yeah, I've unsubbed 8 or 9 accounts because of the stuff they're doing with drifters. And at the same time, these guys, a couple guys, right? Or between them 20 accounts that they're not subbing. And they maintain that they're doing it out of protest, even though the changes that are being made aren't going to affect the large empires that both guys belong to, the Imperium. So I said, well, what happens when it is affecting you because you guys are not subbing 20 accounts between the two of you? Why is it not affecting empires? What if they need your help? And they said, well, we'll turn them back on. So are people unsubbing, or are they just trying to send a message to CCP that they don't like the content that they're seeing? That question we're going to take on in public, so hang out with us, Talking in Stations. For now, that's the end of this stream. We will be back tomorrow. And there's the telemarketer that usually comes on. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.